You're tuned in to Oilers Nation every day with Tyler Yaremchuk, live every weekday on the Nation Network YouTube.
The roller coaster continues. The Oilers beat the Florida Panthers, and we are back to believing this is a Stanley Cup contender. That's the way this regular season's going to go. Let's get into the win on Saturday and everything else. Oilers with the lead. It was a 4-2 victory for the Edmonton Oilers, and a rather impressive one on a few different levels. Regardless, they won, and on a very tough road trip, one of the toughest road trips you can go through in the NHL with stops in Carolina, Tampa, and Florida. The Oilers walk out of it with 4 of 8 points. And all in all, it's kind of like, how can you complain about that? The tough part is that the wins were really impressive. Being able to wrap up that trip by beating Florida, fantastic. That win against Tampa, we might look back on that as one of the most impressive victories of the entire season. But the losses were just so damn ugly. The fact that he somehow lost to Washington to kick things off, terrible. The fact that they couldn't beat Carolina when Carolina was on the second of back-to-backs playing their third-string goalie. Yikes. But those 2 wins were big. So I want to know, let me know in the YouTube chat, what letter grade are you giving this Oilers road trip? That is the big question today on Oilers Nation Every Day. As always, coming to you live from the Sports Closet studio, sportscloset.ca. 3 locations in the Edmonton area: St. Albert Mall, Sherwood Park Mall, and Kingsway Mall. Drop your letter grade for the road trip in the chat, and we'll get your take on it. Live on the Nation Network YouTube. That's where our chat line exists. That's where you can have your take. Let's bring in my boy Liam. Liam, I'm giving them a B-. I think anything in the C range is too tough because, again, really, really difficult road trip. Anything more than a B, like a B, feels like I'm giving them too much credit because they did lay 2 eggs. So B-. Passing grade, B-.
It's so difficult to give them any kind of, like, what a road trip. Like, just so many ups and downs. Like, the positives, obviously Skinner. Warren Foegele doing really well. Tyson Barrie contributing offensively. You look at the negatives. The penalty kill was horrendous at the start of the week. And then you also lose terribly to Carolina and Washington and, of course, Jack Campbell.
Yeah.
I think B-, maybe a C+, somewhere in that range. Is just somewhere right in the middle because there was too much that went wrong, but also too much good for them. And, you know, you go 2-2. It's not bad at all.
You're right. It's a weird one to kind of put your finger on. Right now in the Pacific Division, the Oilers sit 4th. They are 4 points clear of the Calgary Flames. Granted, the Flames have 2 games in hand. They're a point back of Seattle, same amount of games played. They are 3 points back of LA with 1 less game played. And then they are already 8 points back of the Vegas Golden Knights. But while we may sit here at what is essentially the 1-month mark of the NHL season, more or less, and the Oilers are not in one of those big Pacific Division playoff spots. They're fighting for a wild card spot right now. A week from now, if this week coming up, if the Oilers show up and play well, things look vastly different. At that point, you would maybe only be anywhere from 4 to 6 points back of the Vegas Golden Knights. You could be ahead of the LA Kings by the end of this week. A lot can change here in the next 7 days. This is a big, big week on tap for the Oilers, and one that will really define the first half of their season.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a big thing for the Oilers right now is they haven't played their division very often. What have they played? Vancouver once, Calgary twice, and that's it, right? Like, they haven't played LA, they haven't played Vegas. There's still a lot of season to go, of course. I think those Vegas games are obviously going to be big for the division. They're looking back like they're a serious contender now too after a difficult season last season. But you look at Vegas's goaltending, like, is it gonna? It's kind of like Jack Campbell, but the opposite, right? Like, is it gonna be like this all season? Probably not. Is a fair way to put it. But yeah, like this next stretch of games, we said it on Oilers Nation Radio too. I think is kind of a big statement for the Oilers to see what they can actually do against really good NHL teams.
Yeah. I do think there are some things we saw on this road trip that are concerning. We have the scoring leaders from those 4 games by the Oilers, and as you'll see, it's basically the top power play unit that did most of the production. Now, there were some nice moments of depth scoring. Warren Foegele had a couple of huge goals, in both of the victories. You need things like that. The fourth line was on the ice for Tyson Barrie's first goal of the game against the Panthers as well. Those were encouraging, but I do still think they need more from the depth of this team. I asked you for your letter grades over on our YouTube chat. Rusty's going with a B. Vince is going with a B minus. Luke says, I'll take the 2-2 for sure. He went with a B. Jamel, B. P.A. James, B minus. Seems like everyone, 587 Legend, is B minus because we lost Kane. And that's something I didn't even really, I didn't think about in giving my grade is when you went out on this trip, you had Evander Kane, and now you're sitting here for what? We know it's going to be at least 3 to 4 months. It could potentially be longer where you're not going to have this guy. So again, the depth of this team's going to have to keep stepping up. But I will say, I think a guy like Warren Foegele did himself a lot of favors with this road trip. He was really good against Tampa Bay, blocked a big shot at the end. He obviously scored the shorthanded goal. He was really good against Florida as well. He laid a couple of big checks. He obviously had the big goal. He's probably going to start on Wednesday in the top 6. That should probably mean Dylan Holloway goes down to Bakersfield. Because again, you're just going to be stuck in the rut of Dylan Holloway playing 6 minutes a game again. And I don't understand how that makes sense. Unless you're going to try him on the third line and giving meaningful minutes there, but I'm not sure if they'll even do that. But Warren Foegele, in my opinion, he's overtaken the second line spot. Wednesday night against LA should be Foegele, Draisaitl, whoever you need to roll on the right side, Zach Hyman. So I think they'll change that up. One huge positive from this road trip, touched on a negative of losing a guy like Evander Kane. I think Stuart Skinner solidified himself as the man. Look at this performance against the Florida Panthers. 40 of 42. 952 save percentage, gets the win. The third-round pick from back in 2017 is having one of the best seasons in the entire NHL. Amongst goalies with at least 5+ appearances this season, he's 6th in save percentage. He's right up there with guys like Ottinger and Sorokin and other high-end young goalies in the NHL. He was unbelievable against Florida. They don't win that game if it's not for Stuart Skinner. And while maybe you could look at his record so far this season and be like, he's kind of been a 500 goalie. He's 3-3. Man, you go through those wins and he's stolen the games where he's started. Against St. Louis, he stopped 37 of 38. Against Calgary, he stopped 40 of 42. Liam pointed out before the show, an identical stat line in that Calgary game to this Florida one as well. He was great against Florida. The games he's winning, he is absolutely stealing for this team. And I mentioned the Pacific Division standings. Edmonton does not have 18 points in 16 games if it's not for Stuart Skinner. So I think you go with him on Wednesday against the LA Kings. And if it goes well, you probably don't have any choice but to roll with him again on Saturday against Vegas. Liam, is it crazy to think that Stuart Skinner could get both Wednesday and Saturday this week?
No, it shouldn't be crazy to think. Right now, like we talk about how Jack Campbell's playing and when should he start next. I don't think Jack Campbell's performances should dictate when he should start next. It should be based off when Stuart Skinner deserves a break. Because right now, this is his crease, and he's the goalie that deserves to play these big games for the Oilers. And the next two are big games for them that they need to win at home against LA and Vegas. And look at that, 40 saves against a very offensive team in Florida, with 20 of them coming in the first period. Like he's the reason the Oilers won that game. To be honest, if it wasn't for him, who knows what would have happened after that first period?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they did they got outshot in every game on this road trip, and that's maybe a reason why the grade should be more in that C+ range, like you said, Liam. Because I mean, in every single one or in both those wins, they needed their goalies to be good. Even in the game against Washington, they lost 5-4, but I actually thought Skinner was good in that game. The penalty kill was just awful. That was the reason they lost the trip opener against the Capitals. But again, a big week of hockey here, and I think if you're an Oilers fan, you got to be somewhat optimistic about them heading into this week, just because they survived, and that's the big thing. I didn't expect them to thrive on this road trip. If they would have gone 3-1 or 4-0 or whatever, that would have been great. But you can't complain about 2-2 is kind of the bottom line here, looking back on this trip.
We spoke about it on Saturday too for the pregame show. Like, this team finds a way to rebound really well. Like, no matter what. Like, that Washington game, like, the penalty kill, like we said, wasn't great. Then they bounce back against Tampa Bay and have a really good game. As a whole team, and the penalty kill was much better. Then you play Carolina and you stink. And then you bounce back against Florida and have a really good game. Like, they're just a bit of a yo-yo team right now. I think you've just got to play off momentum with the way things go. I actually thought Klim Kostin was a pretty good bright spot for the team too on Saturday. Yeah, I think he brings a different element. He looked like an NHL player for a guy that's only played 40 or so games. Like, I thought that was very positive for the team. Like you mentioned, Foegele, Van de Kane, losing him isn't great. I know Jason Gregor gave an update on Yamamoto before too, and it doesn't look like he's going to play on Wednesday. I believe he said maybe Saturday he could be back. So I think there's a chance for the Oilers' depth to kind of keep riding as well. But like I said, momentum's a big thing for this team at the moment, and they got to find a way to keep riding it these next two games.
I want to bring everyone's attention to something that happened today on the DFO Rundown. Former Oilers goalie Devin Dubnyk joined Jason Gregor and Frank Saravalli, and he was asked who is the worst teammate for firing pucks up high during warmups, and his answer is hilarious. Here, take a listen.
Nail Yakupov.
Well, Frank and I joked about this earlier. So, who was the worst teammate you had for high heaters in practice?
Oh, Nail Yakupov. This guy was an idiot, like complete idiot. I tried to explain to him. So we were doing like a low drive from the corner, and he's zipping these things past my ear because he's trying to hit the elbow. And I try to explain to him. I'm like, you realize there's three outcomes here, okay? You hit the post. Sorry, you miss the net. You score, or you hit me in the ear. And I'm like, I hate all three of those. So if you want to practice this shot, go do it at the other end.
Did he ever get it?
Did he? Well, obviously not. He's nowhere to be found, so I don't think he hit that elbow too often.
Well, Frank and I joked about this earlier. Who was the worst teammate?
He's an idiot. He's a complete idiot. And Electronic Jordan says, poor Yak in the chat. And yeah, I mean, I guess. I just thought that was, a very open answer from Doobie. Liam, you're muted.
I was muted.
Oh, there you go.
Unbelievable. Never mind. I was just saying, Yakupov, what a guy, character.
Yeah. TC in the chat says Yak seems like he'd selly after going upstairs in warmups. I think that was kind of the point Dubnyk was making, but it was a really good interview with Dubnyk. He talked about how his last off season in Edmonton, he was just basically sitting there listening to the media and all the reports being like, the Oilers need a goalie. The Oilers are looking for a goalie. The Oilers are shopping for any goalie on the market. And he talked about how it kind of messed with his confidence a little bit. And he described that next season, the one where the Oilers eventually traded him during the year, and he spent some time in like Nashville and Arizona and all that, and Montreal for a bit, wherever he was. He bounced around to like 100 places. And he talked about it was just the longest season ever. And by the end of it, he was skating as a black ace for Montreal during that playoff run. And he eventually was just like, yeah, I can't do it anymore. Like I'm done. And he went home after skating with the Black Aces for a bit and then magically turned his career around. And he talked about the whole journey. So if you have a second, or if you have an hour today, I should say, go listen to his interview with Jason and Frank on the DFO Rundown. You can find that one wherever you get your podcast from. Good time to plug that you can find this show wherever you get your podcast from as well. If you ever miss it live, if you're ever driving, can't watch the video, we're available as a podcast, Oilers Nation every day on Apple and Spotify. Rusty says, we need to calm down on running guys out of town. Let's support the boys. Yeah, I mean, that was certainly, like, the Decade of Darkness was just full of that, though, right? Like, especially by that era where it had already been kind of 5 years of sucking, and it was starting to look like the first rebuild wasn't going to work, and it didn't work. It was a lot of running guys out of town because just the fan base had lost patience. Everyone had lost patience. I think the organization lost patience. Look at a guy like Justin Schultz, right? Comes in here, they start hyping him up as the savior because they need to turn things around in a hurry. And when he's not Erik Karlsson in his second year in the NHL, I think it's less of a thing now. And I know, Flute, you're saying still a thing, unfortunately. To an extent, I think it is. And you compare it to the Campbell situation. I get it. Right now, it's a little bit different because they are actively trying to win a Stanley Cup and results matter like that much more. But I do think Rusty makes a good point. Like, we maybe look at things under a microscope too much when we're here every day talking about the same team. Puljujarvi, maybe a decent example of that as well, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think this team's in that spot as much anymore with trying to get guys out of here. And I think the frustration, like you said, just the team was going absolutely nowhere. We had all this promise, and then everything just went wrong every time we tried to do something. And then, yeah, like the Justin Schultz thing, I remember when they officially signed him in Millennium Place in Sherwood Park. I was there that day. That was a big one. So it just, yeah, they're not doing training camps there anymore. So it's just a different vibe from this team now, and I think it's all positive. And yeah, we talk about Campbell, but also Campbell hasn't been good this season, and I think criticism's fair as well. We're not running him out of town. We just want to see better performances, I guess is a good way to put it.
Dr. Gonzo, looking back at that 2012 draft, woof. We should maybe link in the description of this one later. I did like a redraft piece on our YouTube 2 months ago, looking back at that draft, kind of basically the 10-year mark of it. Yak, Murray, Galchenyuk, Reinhart, Morgan Riley was your top 5. Like, only one of them panned out. Ryan Murray might one day hit like the 5-year mark of his career, or hit the 500 game mark in his career if he bounces around a few more times. But that 2012 draft is ugly. Slater Cuckoo went 10th overall. The Oilers have had a bunch of these guys, but like good players really didn't start popping up in that draft. I guess Hampus Lindholm at 6 was good. Morgan Riley was fine. There was that run of D-men. Matt Dumbo was in there as well. The best player out of that draft is Andrei Vasilevsky, who went 19th. And he's probably going to be the only guy who even gets close to being like a Hall of Fame level player from that 2012 draft. No one else is even going to come near it, I don't think.
Devin Shore, 61st overall.
Yeah, you're right. There's another former. Jujhar Khaira went 63rd that year. The Oilers, they bounced back from that Yakupov pick, did they? Nah, not really. Mitch Moroz in the second round. That was an ugly era where they were just plucking any Oil King they could. And then they probably stopped doing that as the wrong time, as the Oil Kings have now actually started to spit out some good prospects. But anyways, we're getting a little bit off topic here. We have a guest today on the show. Very excited, from TSN 1260 and the Jason Gregor Show, to welcome in Connor Halley, who's sitting at the radio station right now. Connor, how's it going, man?
Oh, going good, Tyler. Thanks for having me on. And if you want to talk about those old Oil Kings teams, that's right in my wheelhouse. I got a chance to watch a lot of those games. So Mitch Moroz, man, that guy was fun to watch for a couple of years here in Edmonton. Too bad it didn't work out.
Man, isn't it insane to look back at those Oil Kings teams and be like, they were dominant for 3 or 4 years in the dub. And Jari, maybe Brossoit, Lazar's had an okay career as a bottom 6 guy. But aside from Jari, they basically produced no superstars. It's crazy.
No superstars. Lazar, Jari. Laurent Brossoit was there for the first run to the Memorial Cup. Dyson Mayo was a young kid at the time playing on the team that won, I believe. So that was kind of it. Yeah, and Ashton Sautner's kind of bounced around. Brandon Baddock, who was there. But yeah, pretty crazy to think that no one really made that leap and, got to NHL stardom.
Luke in the chat says, you look like Stuart Skinner with that mustache. My argument is you have the second best mustache on the show, Connor. Come on.
That's when you zoom in close enough, it looks good. I'm actually being benefited by the lighting here. It is really bad. I was shuffling around this studio to find a good spot, and this is the best I could do. But it does make the stash look pretty dark today.
When you zoom in close enough. All right, let's talk some Oilers, Connor. That road trip, it was an absolute roller coaster. Terrible against Washington, great against Tampa, terrible against the Hurricanes, really good against Florida. What letter grade would you give the Oilers on that 4-game trip?
Tyler, I was talking on our pregame show and like with Gregor and Strutty about, what would be a successful road trip for the Oilers going on this one. And the consensus was, 2-2 wouldn't be that bad, all things considered. Like you're going up against some really good competition, heading out east on the road, lots of games into kind of a compacted schedule. So I'll give them a B minus. I think that, the good was good and the bad was pretty bad at times. Almost a microcosm of the whole season, really. Like we've seen the ups, the downs. There's been adversity. I think when you factor in, you lose two of your top 6, top 9 wingers on that road trip, and then have that gutsy win on Saturday, a little bit of positive to be taken from it. I mean, it almost leaves you now with more questions than answers because you got to figure out that top 6, top 9 going forward here with the loss of a couple key players. But overall, hey, take those 4 points and be happy with it because it could have been a lot worse, I think.
Yeah, and that's fair. Jason Gregor tweeted out, you mentioned the Oilers lose 2 of their top 9 wingers. Kyler Yamamoto, Gregor says, is more day-to-day than long-term. Unlikely to play Wednesday, might be ready for Saturday night against the Vegas Golden Knights. It's a big, big week for this Oilers team. 2 divisional games in the matter of a few days. If you were in charge of the goaltending, how would you handle this? Would it be Skinner Wednesday, Skinner Saturday, no matter what? Are you giving Campbell another look? Is it based on what happens Wednesday night? How would you go about this thing?
I think for me, I mean, it's Stuart Skinner on Wednesday, no matter what. So you said it, 2 big divisional games, teams that are ahead of you in the standings. You can't afford to try to get a guy back on track. You have to go with the better goaltender, and that's Stuart Skinner. He's been great. The stats are one thing, but I think in those games when it's one goal, up or down, he looks composed, like he's ready to go. So for me, I take Stuart Skinner on Wednesday for sure against the Kings, and then go from there. If it goes well, I've got no problem going back to him. There's enough time in between. And if it's a shaky performance, then, you have that kind of built-in excuse to go back to Campbell. So I think no matter what, Stuart Skinner gets to start on Wednesday, and then you go from there. But absolutely no problem sticking with the kid because he's playing some good hockey right now.
You mentioned he looks confident, and obviously we know like Jack Campbell doesn't. My big thing would just be like,
Yeah.
I want to put him in the best spot to succeed the next time he gets a start, and I would worry about primetime Hockey Night in Canada divisional game against Vegas on home ice. Like, I'd worry that almost rattle him a little bit. I think you maybe do have to save him for next week in the road trip when it's just out on the East Coast. Maybe you'd feel a little bit less pressure in that situation, but I guess eventually you got to give him a start. I don't envy Jay Woodcroft in the situation he's in with that one because it's a mess right now.
Yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, Stuart Skinner goes out there, has a great game against the Kings, and the decision's simple, right? I also wonder, though, like you say, I mean, just for his psyche, does he get up for a game like that? You find out a lot about a goalie, on the big stage against a team that's playing very well. Like you say, Hockey Night in Canada, everybody's watching. Is that something he gets up for? Because at some point he's going to have to get back there. I think at the end of the year, he is going to be the guy for this team when the playoffs roll around. So he's got to find that level, get to it. And maybe Saturday night's a good opportunity for him. But I stand by what I said. If Stuart Skinner plays good for you on Wednesday, easy decision. And yeah, it's probably not the best thing that, Coach Woodcroft would have hoped for, but there's worse situations, right? Like a good goaltending battle. I think that's okay.
Second line with Leon Draisaitl. I think you're probably leaving McDavid, Nuge, and Puljujarvi together. They seem to be creating okay, even if the pucks aren't going in for them. Draisaitl and Hyman, Kate, that's your duo. But who would you have on the left side there Wednesday? Like I like Holloway. I think Holloway has potential. I'd love to see him get some rope, but you also can't ignore the bad mistakes. Foegele scored a goal on over the weekend, so maybe he's back in that spot. What would you do there?
Yeah, I mean, it's between those two, right? Dylan Holloway, you kind of just look at his game logs here, and only on 3 occasions has he played more than 10 minutes this season so far, and the game on Thursday night, that -3 does stand out. But there is the upside, right? And I think that you can kind of give that a chance. Warren Foegele is the only other option for me. It seems like since he was given a chance on the PK and scores that shorty, the confidence is all of a sudden back, and pretty crazy to think. There was people on our shows in the last couple of weeks, you got to trade him, get rid of Foegele, and now he's kind of found his way back into their hearts. So I think it's between those two. I lean to Dylan Holloway and giving him that other opportunity, and then Foegele on that third line where he can help out. He and McLeod, it looks like they found some chemistry. So I lean to Dylan Holloway. I'd like to see him get another shot because we know the talent that he has, the potential. He's just got to figure it out. And in my opinion, if he's just going to be a guy who plays 6 to 8 minutes here. Why is he here? He could go down to Bakersfield, play in a top line, power play, play heavy minutes against the other team's top competition, and I think that would be better for his development. So, in my opinion, give him a chance, or why have him here?
Yeah, and I touched on that earlier in the show. Like, if you're just going to keep rolling him out there for 6 minutes and not play him with skilled guys, have him out there with Devin Shore and Derek Ryan, like that, you're not doing anything for a 14th or 15th overall pick, whatever he was a little bit later than that, but he's a first-round pick, and you're not doing anything to help his development. Wednesday night, the Oilers are also going to be rocking their reverse retros for the first time, so we'll wrap up with this. What's your letter grade for the reverse retros?
D. I really don't like them. Tyler, I grew up a fan of that look, the Todd McFarlane jersey. When I was a kid, I had to have it. So I do have one of those older jerseys. I thought it would have been just fine if they went back to that one. Adding the orange, it's tough. We saw those a little while ago, and I just thought there's no way they're going to roll out with these jerseys. They're terrible. They have grown on me a little bit. Like, had you asked me a month ago, I probably would have said F. So I want to hold back and see what they look like when they actually get on the ice, with the pants, the socks, the helmet, the gloves, how the whole look ties together. But I got to say, I'm not a huge fan of the look so far. How about you?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of with you. I'm in like I'd give him like a C. Maybe you're right with the socks, the lights, all that on the ice.
Yeah, we got to see how it looks.
But you're bang on. Like, the orange it was a little bit unnecessary. Rusty gives them a B, though. He says it might change when I see them on the ice, but they're all right. And I think everyone kind of agrees with that. Connor, appreciate the time, man. Look forward to chatting with you a little bit more throughout the season.
Man, anytime, Tyler. Thanks a lot.
All right, there you go. Let's get to the wrap for today's show. Big shout out to Connor Halley for hopping on the show today. You can find him on Twitter at Connor Halley, 2 N's, 2 L's. He's always tweeting out clips and stuff during Oilers games. A very good follow. Also, if you're watching on our YouTube right now, do me a solid. Hammer that like button as well. We're at 15 likes right now. If you can get us up to like 30, then I'll give you my locks of the day for betting. Not that I had a very good weekend by any stretch of the imagination, but speaking of that, Liam, let's get to our Betway bets for this evening in the NHL. What do you got for us?
Tonight, so what is it? 4 games in the NHL, I think it said. And we're going to go with the Stanley Cup champions for our first one. Colorado to win and Nathan MacKinnon to score 2 or more points. He is probably the hottest player in the NHL right now. I think he said he had like 14 points in however many games recently. Like, he's 4 games in a row of multi-point games. So that's the stat I'm going to look at there. So we'll go with him. St. Louis hasn't been great, actually, since the Oilers beat them. And since, so we'll go right in with that. And I actually clicked on the wrong one. It's the Kevin Fiala over is what we're going with. So ignore that one. It was Kevin Fiala over plus 105. He's hit it in like 4 straight games with his shot prop. So we'll ride that one tonight. They're up in Calgary and then obviously in Edmonton on Wednesday. You got anything you like to? Let me guess. Martin Necas shot prop.
Yes! You know it. Marty Necas over 2.5 shots. Trevor Moore over 2.5 shots. Love both those plays over on Betway. And also Sebastian Aho plus 110 to pick up an assist tonight. I think Carolina. We saw him score 7 on the Oilers last week. They're playing the Blackhawks this tonight. I think they'll score. I think Aho at plus money to get an apple is a great spot as well. Wrapping things up, let's dig into the chat a little bit here. Curtum says, hopefully Foegele plays consistent like he's played the last 3 or 4 games. Even if he doesn't score goals, at least throw your body more, play with desperation on the puck battles. And I'm with you 100% with Foegele. I've always said, like, the Oilers do not need Warren Foegele to be a 20-goal guy. Warren Foegele doesn't need to be a 20-goal guy to be worth his contract. I think certain players in that price range, Puljujarvi, Yamamoto, just because of the opportunities they get and the skill they have, yeah, those guys need to get you 20 goals a season to be worth that $3 million price tag. If Foegele gets you 12 or 13 goals a year, 14 like he did last year, maybe 14 is the minimum. But if he plays hard, forechecks like a demon, hits a lot, kills penalties for you, he's a fine bottom 6 player at that price tag. The scoring is secondary. You're right. It's effort stuff sometimes that you just don't maybe always see with Foegele. We certainly saw it on that road trip, though. Vince says A. He loves the Oilers reverse retros. Smart Cowboy gave him a D. Someone is talking about we need to trade Devin Shore. I mean, well, like, You can't. Like, no one would want him. Also, like, he's fine as a bottom 6 guy. Remember, he makes like $850K, like basically league minimum. What more? Like, again, you can slide him in out of your lineup. I don't think Devin Shore, he could maybe be healthy scratched for a game. Sure. I thought he didn't have a very good game against Carolina. That probably could have translated to someone else in the lineup, but they don't have a lot of healthy bodies right now. Kirby asks if Tyler Benson's healthy. He's not, but he's getting there. They're working him back, and he's a guy who I think they'll give a nice look to once he is healthy as well. Curtum says those jerseys look pathetic, too much orange. I think it is just a little bit too much orange, but I'll wait till I see him on the ice before I really go out of my way to start ripping them as well. We're going to see that on Wednesday. Oilers, Kings, Oilers in their reverse retros. I don't know if you saw the LA Kings wore their reverse retros the other night, and they were beautiful. The white, purple, yellow with that crown, so sick. So sick. All right, we're going to move and wrap up this show here today. Thanks for tuning in. A Monday edition of Oilers Nation Everyday. As always, coming to you live from the Sports Closet studio. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, noon Mountain, for another 30-45 minutes of Oilers talk. Then Wednesday, it'll be a Sherwood Ford Giant Game Day edition of the show. Thanks for tuning in. Enjoy your Monday night, and we'll talk tomorrow.